So, you know, what I want to address here today is, do you have to be born psychic? And my answer is no. It helps if you are, but I'm not. So how do you know if you're born psychic or not? What are the telltale signs? And basically, you're probably going to see things, bless you, you're probably going to see, you know, auras, you're going to see dead people walking around, you're going to be able to predict the future, there are going to be a number of, you may be highly empathic, whatever. Deb, did I have any of that stuff? No, I had nothing. These are my favorite photos of me. But yeah, no, I had one strange experience when I was 13. It was so weird, I thought, there's no way to explain that. I put it away in my mind and it didn't happen again until much, much later. As I said, the potential was there. This is sort of what I want you to know. First of all, we all have psychic ability. It is innate in all of us. How many of you think that you're psychic? By showing of hands. All right, so just a few. How many of you have had maybe a psychic experience? All right, so more of you. You just didn't know what to do with it. Psychic ability can be trained. I believe that because I'm living proof. We can retrain ourselves to access our sensory knowledge. And it's all about retraining what we knew and what we have now not forgotten, we have been trained out of through the way that we live our lives. So we have to re-educate not only our senses, but our memory and the way we choose to evaluate or judge things. Somebody recently said to me, did you ever take this Myers-Briggs personality test, which you take for jobs? It's a psychology test, so they can figure whether you're good for the job. I had never taken it, so I took a modified version. And if you're not familiar with it, basically they have these sort of polar pairs, okay? So you've got introverts, extroverts, sensing, intuition, thinking, feeling, judging, perceiving. And depending on if you tend a little bit more in one direction, then you're given that percentage, okay? And then there's a total of 16 different types. They're given 4 letters. And my type, turns out, is the INFJ, so I'm known as the counselor type. And as you can see, I'm slightly, not too much, but a little bit more introverted. Now what's really interesting is in terms of intuition over sensing, I'm 100%. I scored 100% intuitive. Feeling, I feel a little bit more than I think. Also interesting to me, judging versus perceiving, there's only 1% difference, which means I'm almost completely equal, judging and perceiving, which in my mind is a really good thing, because if you flip too far over into judging something or just perceiving it, you're going to not get the truth of it. This INFJ type, apparently there are only 3% of us in the population, so we're kind of rare. And according to some of these things they talk about, they have uncanny insight into people and situations. They get feelings about things intuitively. Some INFJs report experiences of a psychic nature. All right, and down here, this extreme sensitivity to others may well be the basis of the counselor's remarkability to experience a whole array of psychic phenomena. I thought, well, that's weird. Psychologists are talking about certain types of people who have psychic ability. I hadn't really seen that before. Now, I do have a problem with that particular test, the Myers-Briggs test. I don't believe that sensing and intuiting are polar opposites. The way that they describe them, we don't have time to go back to that slide, but basically they say sensing people rely on their 5 senses and sort of what's in front and what's there, whereas intuiting people are seeing bigger patterns. I'm not sure what that means, because the way I see this, when you're using your intuition, you are absolutely using your 5 senses. You're using some additional sensory abilities. And when you're doing regular sensing with your 5 senses, you're making patterns all the time. So our senses are what detect the energy of frequencies and vibrations. All right? So psychic senses perceive energy that remains invisible to our 5 senses. What's the difference between a psychic sense and a regular sense? I believe it absolutely nothing. And this is really key here. It's only a matter of what you are capable of identifying, meaning what you recognize as data flowing around out there in terms of energy. How you remember it, mostly we don't remember it because usually it comes in the form of nonsense. And then these frequencies on what I call an extended range of our electromagnetic spectrum, okay? What do I mean by that? Well, if you talk about sound vibrations, all right, the human ear has a range between 20 to 20,000 hertz that we can hear with our ears. You have what lies beyond that on the top end, which is ultrasound, and on the low end, infrasound. So you have certain animals that, like you were talking about dogs, but bats, dogs, mice, they can hear at very high pitches, ultrasound, more than the 20,000 hertz that we can hear. And on the lower end of the scale, you have elephants, whales, giraffes, other animals hear infrasound, much, much lower pitched. Do we hear any of this stuff with our ears? No. Do we access it? Absolutely. Now what's really interesting is, I don't believe in a sixth sense. A lot of people have written books about sixth sense. They say, oh yeah, I got that sixth sense, or animals have sixth senses. Sorry, I don't buy it. First of all, we can't define a sense. You go into any of the medical records or the medical dictionaries, they can't tell you what it is. They can't even tell you how it differs from perception, which involves a little bit of a mental shaping of how we perceive our senses. Our five senses overlap, so you may see something as red in the infrared range and experience it as heat on your skin. So what is it? Is it sight or is it sound? We don't know. Scientists have been saying for decades we have at least as many, or probably as many as 40 senses. I predict that probably within the next decade they're going to discover that we have hundreds. All right, why do I say that? I was going through some medical dictionaries and I came along all these descriptions of different neurological disorders. So I found some really interesting ones. This thing is called amusia, the inability to produce or evaluate musical sounds. Achoria, the inability to feel satiated no matter how much you eat. And hedonia, inability to experience pleasure. Dyscalculia, impaired ability to use math. Environmental agnosia, the inability to orient yourself physically in familiar places. Dysynchronization, the distorted sense of time. Topognosis, the inability to localize the site of a tactile stimulation. Jamais vu, sensation that's everything around you is always unfamiliar and new. Amelodia, the inability to create normal pitch and rhythm and stress in speech. So that made me wonder, well, gee, are we born with a sense of music? Amusia is the loss of a sense of music, in my opinion. Why? Because when I was checking this out, look, neurologically intact individuals appear to be born musical. We're all born musical. Amusia is a musical disorder, and I'm going to go down to the bottom here, which results from a music processing anomaly at birth. So what's the anomaly? Suddenly we lose something that we all had. Wouldn't you call that a sense? Last question, most important. So what's the sensory organ that we use for a sense of music? Clearly it's not only our ears, because if that were the case, this disorder wouldn't exist. It's something to do with our ears and the way that we're processing the information coming in through our ears. That's what I would call perception. All right? So whether you sense energy depends on how you think about it. I brought this up because over the millennia, people have depicted energy in a particular way. And in this sense, I'm sure you probably are somewhat familiar, but all civilizations have shown these sort of halo types of energies around very spiritual people, prophets, gods, emperors, leaders. You've got them on the Roman coins with the Roman emperor. You've got them, the ancient Greeks, the ancient Hindus and Buddhists, the ancient Egyptians, the ancient Persians. They got some interesting fire-looking auras going on. And of course the medieval depictions of the halos, which By the time you got around to the Renaissance, they were working with architecture, perception, or perspectives. They actually made perspective on the halos, so they look a little different. And then finally you get a little bit beyond that, and you get away from this outline of a halo into something, I think, a little bit more realistic. Eastern religions have been doing that for ages with their portrayals of energies, the chakras. You're probably all familiar with that too. You've got 7 basic chakras. Each one is associated with a color, starting at the root chakra, ending up at the crown chakra at the top. How does the psychic see energy? That was one of my big questions when I started out doing this. When I did a training and my teacher said, okay, tonight we're going to read auras. And I said, excuse me, I don't see auras, I don't do auras. And she said, oh, just, go ahead and try it. Just do it anyway. So I thought, all right, I'll humor her. So she paired us up, and I looked at a woman. I saw absolutely nothing. So I said, all right, I'll imagine it. She said, all right, what'd you see? I said, I didn't see anything, but what I imagined was this red that went from her ear down to her neck. And she said, well, what do you think red means? I said, I don't know. She said, pick something. I said, all right, pain. Did you see anything else? No. She said to the woman, all right, what would you like to tell Nancy? She said, I have severe TMJ, and the pain runs from here to here, and it's only on the right side. So I saw something without seeing it. Do I see all of these traditional layers of auras that a lot of psychics will talk about? No. And it's extremely variable. It's what I see is something closer to what Alex Gray, the artist, did here, but not 100%. This is a friend of mine who I do paranormal investigations with. She set up her timer on her camera and invited her deceased father to come in and join her in the picture. She put her hand up, and I think there he is. Now the amazing thing is, she didn't see him with her eyes, but the camera did. So the camera picked up literal energy. In 1939, there was a Russian engineer named Kurlian who developed a certain type of, he ran electrical currents through electromagnetic, or the photoelectric plates that he was using to develop photos, and discovered that living things, all different types, have this sort of energy aura around them. And they're the famous tests that were done where they would cut part of a leaf, they put the leaf back onto the plate, and you could still see the aura of where the cut part used to be, as if there's a residual energy of the living energy. And all you got to do is think about ghosts, and you've got residual living energy that's manifesting all around us. This is somebody who I know and have worked with. He's a British spiritual healer. It's a great photo. Again, this is something that was picked up by the camera. People don't necessarily see this. Sometimes you'll see something, and I have, but I was not there for this. But as you can see in the second photo there, it's become rather sort of green and reddish, and all that white light that is coming out of him, this healing energy. If you look down on his left pant leg, there's a shadow. That's pretty tough to manufacture, to make up. So again, the cameras are catching this kind of energy information. I've had an ongoing issue. I started doing some mediumship readings back in December. My first one I did, and on my computer, my monitor, I have this Microsoft slideshow of about 6 photos that go changing all the time. All of a sudden I started to get these they look like rays of light. And they're not rays of light. I put my blinds down over there so you can see it's not being generated from the outside, it's something in the computer. Never seen it before in my life. Happened to mention it to my client later, and she said, she thought about it, and she said, you know, when my husband was alive, we lived in a house that was surrounded by fields of lavender. And what was interesting was it only showed up on this slide and not on any others. It's still an issue. In fact, I had my cat sitting in front of me on my desk the other day. My cat sneezed really loudly in my face, and I went like that, and it split the screen, and half of it has those rays of light. I haven't figured out what they are. All I know is that my computer has picked up something energetic. There's an issue, I think, when you're doing aura photography, whether it's accurate. Is that what psychics see? Well, sometimes yes, sometimes no. But this is highly, it's conceptualized. It's somebody's idea. You put your hands on electromagnetic plates. It translates the different locations into areas around your head and shoulders, and then translates whatever the temperature and the electricity into different colors that associate with the Indian chakras. I did this first in 1996 when there weren't too many people doing this and there weren't very many machines around, and I was mostly sort of orange and fluffy. I went back 10 years later after I'd been doing all this training to become spiritual, and I decided, well, if I'm spiritual, I think I really ought to have a blue aura. So I don't know, how do you make a blue aura? So I sat there, put my hands on the machine, and tried to be blue. And I broke the guy's machine. He spent 20 minutes trying to fix it. In the meantime, the picture up there with the green aura rolled out, which I thought, oh, all right, that's sort of close. And then he said, no, we're going to do this right. We're going to make sure the printer's working, whatever. We did it again, and my pure blue aura came out. And I was very excited about that. Also, as you can see, his type of machine, normally you don't see the person's face. Mine is clearly, very clear there, and it's sort of an arc. I don't know what that means. So the question is, when you want to be blue, how do you be blue? Because a very well-known skeptic named Joe Nickell said, I'm going to think about sex, and maybe if I'm going to have a red aura. And he did not get a red aura. I can tell you the reason why. It was because he was thinking, and when you're doing this kind of work, you have to stop thinking. Thinking interferes with all of this kind of work. So I would suggest that if you're trying to figure out, well, how do you become blue? You figure out every single one of your 5 senses. What do you create? What feels blue to you? I mean, maybe what feels blue to me doesn't feel blue to you. You create your own code for this. For me, my code would be, and I put up here the 5 senses, and I put up emotion and thought. So it's deep royal blue, high-pitched like a flute sound, smooth like a window, tart like blueberries, with a smell slightly sweet like blue orchids. Emotion is mystical, remote, elegant, and discreet, and the thought is, I am above. So, as I am really trying to stress to you, perception is a combination of sensing, evaluating, which is a form of judging, and remembering. To see the invisible, which is what we're really talking about when you say you're psychic, you have to change your expectations about what you think you're seeing or going to see, and you have to permit multiple interpretations. You have to be really flexible. You're doing gymnastics all the time, letting yourself not get stuck into everything you've ever known in your life. I'm just going to pass over this one. This I want to show you. It's just a really quick YouTube thing.
In life, being focused helps us with distraction, but this focus can cause us to overlook unexpected opportunities. Similarly, when we focus our attention on finding a particular object, we often fail to notice other unexpected objects, a phenomenon referred to as inattentional blindness. Dr. Trafton Drew and research colleagues from the Visual Attention Lab at Harvard Medical School decided to examine if inattentional blindness also exists in the eyes of trained experts, such as radiologists. In a recent study published in Psychological Science, Dr. Drew asked 24 radiologists to search for signs of lung cancer in 239 frames of a chest CT scan. In this stack of images, he inserted 5 consecutive frames containing the image of a gorilla. Despite superior ability of radiologists to detect lung cancer nodules, 20 of the 24 radiologists did not report noticing the gorilla. Interestingly, eye tracking revealed that most of the radiologists who missed noticing the gorilla had looked directly at it. Looking right at something might not be enough to notice that it's there if you're looking for something else. This study suggests that even experts who routinely detect cancer nodules, which are about 48 times smaller than the image of the gorilla, are also susceptible to limitations of attention. By understanding these limitations, future research may help reduce errors committed by experts in diagnostic radiology. baggage screening, and many other professions that involve searching for items that are difficult to find.
All right, how do we get out? All right, great. So, anyone see the gorilla up there? So the point is, we're all the time, we're looking at stuff, it's staring at us right in the face, and we don't see stuff, we don't hear stuff, because we're expecting something else, or we're focused on a different task. I've recently had about 6 foot surgeries, and they're no fun. I was online, I was looking at different x-rays of bunions and things, and I came across this one, and it completely struck me. Do any of you see anything interesting here? No, nothing interesting? Here's what I saw. And to me, that's clear as day. All right, so then you got to go to the next step. All right, so you see a lady's head, a lady's profile in the middle of a bone. What does that mean? It's nonsense in our real logical world, but in the psychic world, you have to start putting together meanings that don't appear to have our normal cause and effect. So it could be that this person had some type of an issue with a woman. Maybe that manifested in this particular deformity in the bone. I don't know, but it's a starting place for you to start to ask questions. So it's a process of transforming nonsense into a new kind of sense. Once you see it, then you got to figure out what does it mean. And you probably all remember the Jesus and the pancake. It sold for $338 on eBay, which is either really good if you're selling a pancake, or it's really bad if you think it's a true sign of Jesus. This was a photo that I particularly like. This was taken by a friend of mine. You can see me, that's me, right up there in the middle. That's another friend who was part of that paranormal investigation. It was a haunted farmhouse in Pennsylvania. Every family moved out roughly every 6 months because they were terrified of the ghost in the house. I had connected with that particular spirit when I was doing mediumship in the house. I looked at this photo and I thought, oh, that's cool, we got the ghost. It's all white up there. And then I realized that my colleague had probably inadvertently flipped on her flashlight for a split second. So I thought, the photo's a bust, it's no good. But I kept looking at it, and I realized something kind of unusual about me. If you look at my head, and that is that my head is translucent, which sometimes happens in photos of mediums. You'll see photos where they're actually missing entire limbs or parts of their bodies, and it's weird. Everything else is in the photo. So I thought that was peculiar. I kept looking at it. I discovered something else interesting. On my neck appeared to be a person. And to me, she looks like she's very frightened, a little horrified, looks like she's got a tall hat on. And then I began to wonder, oh, was she the person who I had connected with earlier in the evening, who apparently had hung herself in the attic, would come down every night, walk down this very long hallway, everyone could hear her in the house, walk around the bedroom, and go back up again. Maybe. Maybe she felt, I don't know, comfortable that I had somehow understood her or sensed her presence in some way. Then I noticed something else interesting. Look at my colleague's flashlight. There's a hand coming out of the flashlight in a direction that would be physically impossible for her to do. Then you got to find a meaning. What does that mean? I don't know. This is, I just thought if I have enough time, I'll do this really quickly. A little bit of a test of your psychic senses. This is a client gave me this recently. Here's all I get, all right? She sends me a photo. She says, where is diplomat? So just as a little test, ask yourself to answer that question. And I don't mean come up with a logical, answer about, well, diplomat is here and there and blah, 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 because of whatever. Just come up with a feeling, a sense, a thought, a sound, a song. It doesn't really matter. Just come up with one item after you ask yourself the question. would normally give you guys a lot more time than this, but I don't have that much time. So I'm gonna show you what I got when I looked at this photo. I got a neck injury. I saw circular stables. I heard, that's why I put it in quotations, I heard the word Patagonia. I didn't know where Patagonia was. I looked it up. Turns out it's that southern tip in Argentina, part of South America. I heard the word Georgetown. I saw a man with a round face and a mustache, and I somehow knew, just knowing, the horse had been sold. So then what I do with this information is I go back to the client and I try and figure out what's what. What does anything mean? Because we're talking about meaning. I got weird sensing stuff. What does it mean? So I said to her, did the horse have a neck injury? Oh, no, definitely not. Oh, okay. You know, he didn't have any teeth, and, you know, when he got his head twisted in the stall thing, he broke his jaw. Okay, but he didn't have a neck injury. All right. I said, and that's what you're dealing a lot of times, because people have a hard time connecting things that aren't 100% literal, because that's how we live our lives, literally. I said, I saw a circular stable. Is he, you know, maybe that's where he is. She said, oh no, well, first of all stables are circular. I said, really? I've never seen a circular stable in my life. She said, yeah, the last one he was in, it was a circular stable. All right. I said, I believe he was sold. Yes, she also believes he was sold after the owner died, and she was good friends with the owner. The new owner, she can't verify it, except she believes that the horse was sold after the owner's death by the owner's sister, who didn't like horses. All right, so that made sense. I said, I got this thing, Patagonia. I don't know what that means. I mean, do you think the horse got shipped to South America? That doesn't really make sense to me. And she said, well, I don't know. I mean, I doubt it, but I don't know. And we're talking, and much later in the conversation, she says, oh yeah, and you know, the place where the owner used to house the horse was at over Pecaglione. I said, what? It was over Pecaglione. Did you see that again? Pecaglione, Pecaglione, Patagonia, Pecaglione, Patagonia. And as I try to tell people all the time, for me, maybe it's different for other people, but I'm just a mere trained person. Getting this kind of information is like trying to see things or hear things underwater. They're not always 100%, but you can get quite close. Last thing, Georgetown. The deceased owner, she told me, went to Georgetown. She started crying at that point. All right, so now I got these weird confirmations on this weird sensory stuff. What do you do with it? You've got to come up with something that's logical and useful in this real world. So I concluded, Diplomat was indeed sold by the sister of the deceased owner. Diplomat's new owner is a man with a round face and a mustache. Couldn't get a name on him. Wouldn't happen. And Diplomat doesn't want to be found by her. Why? And I was sorry to have to deliver this as information, but all of the psychic data that I got was actually pretty accurate, but it all related to the past, nothing to his present. And sometimes the lack of evidence is evidence. So you have to consider that. So that's it. Thank you very much for listening. I appreciate it. I have my book over there for sale if you're interested, and be happy to talk to any of you.